More than 500,000 people are now at risk of starvation, destitution and death, according to the United Nations. Virtually no one in Gaza has been left untouched by hunger. Overnight, Israel intensified airstrikes in Gaza City and is preparing another ground offensive operation. Palestinians have been urged to evacuate. On Thursday, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres appealed to Israel for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. The UN chief also condemned the recent attack on Nasser hospital, which killed at least 20 people, including journalists and medical personnel. Our first guest is a Norwegian medical doctor, professor emeritus and author who has spent years volunteering at hospitals in Gaza. Dr. Mads Gilbert joins us now from Norway. Dr. Gilbert, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Gaza Health Ministry reports that the two latest victims, or rather four latest victims of the famine, are 2 adults and 2 children. They've died in the last 24 hours, bringing the number of hunger-related deaths to more than 300. The United Nations says this is a man-made famine. What are you hearing from your colleagues on conditions inside the besieged territory?
Well, first of all, I just had a conversation the other night with Dr. Youssef Abarish, who is the Deputy Minister of Health in Gaza and a seasoned and very experienced pediatrician. And he warned me and said the famine is very important, but it is not the only problem and threat to the health of the people in Gaza. Don't forget that we are still having many killed every day. We do not have medical equipment, and only half of the hospitals in Gaza are functioning at some level. But commenting on the famine, of course, it's been man-made all along. We've known that for months, and it took a month before the IPC declared famine stage 5. And it's been a nightmare for families in Gaza through all these 2 years. And I've been working in Gaza for more than 20 years, and I'd like to remind your viewers that Gaza has been under strict Israeli siege and blockade for 17 years. And the medical studies already have shown that the children of Gaza, which constitute half of the population, are exposed to anemia, to stunting, which is that they are too low for the age, and other medical problems due to chronic malnutrition. Now, this has, of course, been dramatically augmented with the total siege of all food supply and water. So your numbers, yes, the last number I had was 313 starved to death, and out of them, 119 were children. That is almost 40%. So this starvation, it hits the most fragile part of the population, which will be the children, the women, in particular the pregnant women and the lactating women, of whom there are 110,000. And then, of course, all those in the population with chronic diseases.
Yeah, Dr. Gilbert, almost every member of the United Nations Security Council, the exception being the United States, has called for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza. They actually want a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. They've called on Israel to lift all restrictions on aid delivery. Israel has dismissed these reports. In fact, it calls the famine false and biased. But this is how the UN Under-Secretary General Tom Fletcher describes it.
It is a famine in 2025, a 21st century famine, watched over by drones and the most advanced military technology in history. It is a famine openly promoted by some Israeli leaders as a weapon of war. It is a famine on all of our watch. Everyone owns this. The Gaza famine is the world's famine. It is a famine that asks, but what did you do? A famine that will and must haunt us all.
Dr. Gilbert, when you look at these pictures that are coming out of Gaza, these haunting pictures of human suffering at the level we are seeing right now, why do you believe the world has stood by, is standing by, and allowing this to happen?
Yeah, that's a very important question, Adnan, and I'd like to comment on Mr. Fetcher first. I totally agree with him, but you know, the Security Council have been making these allegations again and again and again. They have voted again and again and again for ceasefire, and it's been vetoed by the US again and again and again. Look, the people of Gaza cannot eat paper or goodwill. They need food, they need water, they need medicine, they need soap, they need showers, they need toilets like any other decent person. And when I see the pictures coming out of Gaza, I feel extremely ashamed to be a white European male, because we would never, ever have allowed this to happen to white European or white American citizens or Australian citizens. There is a deep-rooted racism at the core of this attitude of the world to let it happen. Look, we're talking about 300 to 400 starved to death people, which is a horrible number. And we can only think what would have happened if an enemy had encircled Haifa and Tel Aviv and starved the Jewish population to death. There would be a massive uproar. But don't forget that these 300, 350 starved to death are only a fraction of what have been killed on purpose in Gaza. The last number that I just got is that there are 62,685 killed during these 2 years. Now, we have recent scientific reports published in The Lancet saying that these numbers are 41% underestimated. So if you do your math, you end up with a total number of killed close to 87,000 Palestinians, out of whom 40% are children and women, and 90% are civilians. This is nothing new. This didn't start with the famine. This started with the attack on Gaza. And the root cause, I'm a doctor. I'm not trained to treat symptoms. If you come to me with pain in your abdomen, I can't just give you pain relief. I have to find out, is this some sort of serious disease, and rule out the most serious possible reasons for your pain, which would be cancer and malignant diseases and other types of treatable diseases. The root cause of the misery in Gaza, of the killing and of the starvation and famine, is the occupation of Palestine. It is the Zionist settler colonial project, which has been going on for 75, 80, if not 100 years. And the problem is that the occupying power, Israel, has always enjoyed impunity from the West. And that is the problem.
Dr. Gilbert, looking at the impact of the famine right now on children, what are the long-term consequences for these children? I mean, we're seeing many of them suffer a whole range of illnesses, of diseases, but what about what happens to them in the long term?
Well, we have a massive scientific knowledge about this, and first of all, it's not like you can just turn on the food supply and the water supply to a starved child. That child is stained for life by the starvation. It will be stunted, meaning it will have a slowed growth, so that the physical growth will be slowed. It will have a delayed mental development, and the cognitive function of the brain will be affected. And you will have a plethora of other medical problems for the rest of the life. We have studies showing that even the arteries, the blood vessels to the heart and the other blood vessels in the body will have early signs of arteriosclerosis, which is the basic condition to develop myocardial infarction or cerebral brain strokes. So it's extremely serious to starve children. And once you get food or water, you have to refeed them in a very controlled way, monitoring the salt balance, monitoring the metabolic balance, and the calorie input per day. If not, you may kill them by refeeding them. It's called the refeeding syndrome. So these are very, very difficult and dangerous conditions. And bear in mind that even if the gates of Gaza were opened and free flow of food was allowed by Israel and the United States, they would still not have the medical capacity to control all these starving children and adults when they start refeeding.
Dr. Gilbert, what about the toll that this has taken on medical workers in Gaza? We just had a bombing, a strike at the Nasser hospital. 20 people were killed, among them rescue workers, medical personnel, as well as journalists. What is the toll on medical personnel?
Massive, massive. I myself, not that that is important, but I've had some of my brave medical students killed. Dr. Maisara, who was one of my best students, was killed. He was a graduate doctor then with his whole family in Gaza City. The number of killed healthcare workers in Gaza is 1,890. 1,890, and around 600 healthcare workers are detained in the Israeli concentration camps, many of them tortured, some of them killed by torture. So the toll on the staff of the healthcare system in Gaza has been massive. And we get news every day of targeted killing of leaders within the healthcare system. Most of the senior consultants and the experts, you know, the seasoned, experienced experts of cardiovascular disease, of neurology, of these specialties have been killed. So it's a very young remaining core group of medical doctors, medical students, nurses, paramedics, and the bravery of the Palestinian healthcare workers who continue to work in the about 15 hospitals that are still at some level operative is immense. We've heard the stories of young medical students, third year, fourth year, who have been allowed or who have been needed to step in as surgeons and as consultants almost, and they have developed quickly. So the toll on the healthcare system in Gaza is massive, but we should not forget the bravery of the leadership, Dr. Youssef Abarish, and the bravery of all these healthcare workers who have not given up but stand by their people.
Dr. Mats Gilbert, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
For more on the Israel-Palestine conflict, let's bring in our panel. Joining us from Ontario, Canada, is Michael Lynk. He is a former UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territories. Here with us in the studio is Khalil Sayegh. He's a political analyst and co-founder and president of the Agora initiative. And Dan Arbell is a scholar in residence with the Center for Israeli Studies at American University right here in Washington, D.C. Thanks, everyone, for being with us. Dan, let me start with you. Israel continues its military offensive in Gaza ahead of a full-scale offensive on Gaza City. Here is what the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said about this. Let's watch.
I don't think I can elaborate too much, but I will say one thing. It started in Gaza, and it will end in Gaza. We will not leave those monsters there. We will free all our hostages. We will ensure that Gaza will no longer constitute a threat to Israel.
So, Dan, what is the Israeli goal with this offensive against Gaza City? What is Israel trying to accomplish?
So, thank you, Anand. This is a very controversial decision by the government. And we hear that the IDF chief of staff and other senior military leaders are opposing it. However, the military is subordinate to the political echelon, and they will carry out some sort of operation likely soon. And the idea is to increase the pressure on Hamas not to immediately enter Gaza City, but kind of surround it, its environs, and to place added pressure on the population in Gaza City with the hope that this brings Hamas to more concessions. I myself don't see that taking place. I think that if the IDF is against it, it has good reasons to be against it. And likely we'll see more casualties. It will mean the death sentence to the Israeli hostages, 20 live hostages still there. IDF soldiers will be killed and so on. So I think it's not a good thing, but this is, and the plans are not exactly clear of what the operation will entail, but this is what the political leadership of Israel right now is pushing for.
Dan, there is a ceasefire plan on the table right now. Hamas has reportedly accepted that plan. What is Israel's position?
So interestingly, it's another interesting point because 3 weeks ago, if you would have asked Netanyahu, he would have agreed to what Hamas has agreed to. Now he's reversed his decision, and now he wants a full agreement on all 50 hostages to be returned for an end of for an end of fighting and surrender of Hamas. So right now, this is being negotiated behind the scenes, but it is not clear, again, what Israel is trying to achieve right now. It's very confusing, and the mediators, Qatar and Egypt, are trying still to, and the United States is pressuring, but still it's not really clear where this is heading.
Michael Lynk, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, he says another Israeli onslaught on Gaza City will result in more human suffering, in immense human suffering. Let's listen to some of what he had to say.
Israel's initial steps to military take over Gaza City signals a new and dangerous phase. Expanded military operations in Gaza City will have devastating consequences. Hundreds of thousands of civilians, already exhausted and traumatized, would be forced to flee yet again, plunging families into even deeper peril.
So, Michael, why do you believe that Israel is mounting this offensive in Gaza City?
I believe the military offensive is because Netanyahu doesn't want an end to this war. He needs to keep his fractious coalition of far-right nationalists together, and he has been, if you like, dangling peace offers or ceasefire offers, only to refuse them when pushed. He wants a war. He claims that the political objective is the elimination of Hamas. I think virtually any respected military and political commentator who knows Gaza and who knows Israel and Palestine knows that's not going to happen. Hamas apparently has replenished virtually all of the troops that is lost. Yes, it has virtually no rockets left, but it has the military offensive to be able to stay coherent in Gaza. And what I think Netanyahu wants and needs is an endless war to avoid elections, to certainly avoid a reckoning with the Israeli public over October 7th, and to sustain his time in power to avoid corruption charges. So I think all of those have to be considerations as to why this forever war keeps on going.
Michael, you know, we were just watching and listening to Dr. Mads Gilbert, the Norwegian doctor who has wide experience in Gaza. He's worked there for the last 20 years, telling us about horrific conditions in the territory right now. We have 14 of the 15 members of the United Nations Security Council say that the famine in Gaza is man-made and that the use of starvation as a weapon of war is a violation of international humanitarian law. It is banned under humanitarian law. The sole Security Council member that was not in agreement with that was the United States. Still, can these UN statements make a difference? I mean, or do we need much stronger action?
I think the fact that 14 of the 15 members of the Security Council released a joint statement and made a joint press conference with respect to this is a signal and an opening for the UN General Assembly in the weeks to come, because they will be starting their fall 2025 session in mid-September, to consider using a Uniting for Peace resolution to create a international military force that would go in to be peace making and peacekeeping into Gaza. Certainly the Palestinians are now rumored to be saying, you know, we invite you in. This is Gaza. This is sovereign Palestinian territory. No other solution that's workable is on the table. There has been pleading by Western political leaders for the last 4 months, since May, warning Israel not to go any farther. Israel then crosses another red line. Another statement of warning is issued. Another red line is crossed. This now, I think, is a time for action. And I think those in the leadership positions in the General Assembly are now considering whether or not to introduce this kind of resolution in September or early October that would really force the UN's hands. And remember as well that the UN set a deadline last September for 1 year for Israel to end its occupation fully and withdraw all of its settlers and all of its settlements. That 1 year deadline is now the 18th of September 2025. So I think we're going to see, if you like, some of the most important issues the UN has faced in decades now on the table, with the longest running UN issue on its agenda.
Khalil, good to have you with us. Welcome to the show. You know Gaza well. You're from there. You're familiar with the region as well. The Israelis are ordering Palestinians to evacuate Gaza from this area around Gaza City ahead of this threatened offensive on the city. They say 2 aid centers will be set up south of Gaza City. Where can Palestinians go to at this point?
To start with, let's recap how things have started. Right after the Hamas attack in October 23, Israel had 2 choices, basically, to get in and replace Hamas and have a new authority that will come in instead of Hamas, or to actually ethnically cleanse the Palestinians and genocide them. I think that Israel has chosen the second, to genocide the Palestinian, ethnic cleanse them. They failed because Egypt has not allowed the Palestinians to get into Egypt, so they ended up just, ethnic cleansing them to Rafah, and then they allowed them back to the north of Gaza. And right now they want to redo the whole thing again, to push the Palestinians to the south. The south is completely demolished. Khan Yunis, Rafah is completely demolished, destroyed. There's no resources there for people to go. The border with Egypt wouldn't be open, and the situation is catastrophic. However, I think the Israelis have already started their attack on Gaza City. They're determined to continue ethnic cleanse the Palestinians, and I think that Netanyahu's hope, after he failed to ethnic cleanse the Palestinians to Egypt, is that he will have forever war in Gaza, so he doesn't have to face the consequences of his own actions.
Are there any options for the people in Gaza right now, the Palestinians there, to stop this war?
The simple answer is no. There is no option for the Palestinians. They don't have the agency or the power to do anything about it. The Palestinians have tried all means, with the last, being Hamas saying yes to a ceasefire agreement, but the Israelis are saying no.
Dan, if we look at another part of the occupied territories, if we look at the West Bank, the Israeli army has been attacking Palestinians there and raiding their homes. 80 people have been injured. What's behind these raids there?
So, Anand, first of all, I'm not a spokesman of the Israeli government, but I do know that on the IPC report, Israel has stated it's an outright lie, and that in addition to that, not saying that there is no starvation policy. I think that there's a trivialization of different concepts like genocide, like starvation, like concentration camps that are being used ethnic cleansing, being used very easily by some of the speakers. Yet at the same time, they certainly do not reflect the situation on the ground. As for the West Bank, it's also, things are heating up. There's tension there. There's settler violence. And there's also active Hamas cells in the West Bank, and terrorists in different areas like the refugee camp of Jenin. And so we do see this playing out. It's very concerning. And we've been fortunate that things have not erupted into a full-scale confrontation. But certainly, if this continues, we shouldn't be surprised if it goes in that direction.
Khalil, getting back to what you were telling us a moment ago about the Israeli goal being to ethnically cleanse Gaza, there was a meeting this week in Washington hosted by President Trump. At this meeting was the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and the Israeli Security Minister Ron Dermer. They were discussing Gaza's future, and the Axios, which is a political newspaper published in Washington, said the meeting at the meeting, Dermer said that Israel does not want to occupy Gaza, and nor did it want to expel Palestinians. Do you believe that?
Sure. I mean, to start with, all the data showed that at the very beginning, Israel have tried to ethnic cleanse the Palestinians. Not only that, when they pushed them to the south, I mean, we have enough, journalistic even articles that showed how Tony Blinken back then went to Egypt and tried to convince President Sisi to accept the Palestinians, open the border, etc. So this is a case that is already settled. I think they've tried, they failed, thanks to the Egyptians, not to anyone else that they rejected, and thanks also to the Palestinian resilience. Today, I think that Israel is looking at other directions. I think we've seen reports about Israel going to South Sudan and trying to negotiate settlement with them. They went to Somaliland, and they tried to go to different directions. So there is no doubt in my mind that Israel is trying to ethnic cleanse the Palestinians. However, realistically, the question, can they do it? And the answer is obviously no, because the Palestinians are resilient, and also because Egyptians and the others in the region have rejected that. However, the meeting that we've had yesterday in DC is concerning in itself. I mean, meeting about Gaza with no Palestinian or Arab involvement is concerning. And not only that, but you have Kushner on the table discussing that. Kushner is the guy who literally few months ago said that Gaza just has a nice property on the beach and we should just like invest in that and look into that. So it's quite concerning what's going on, although we don't have a lot of information on what went to this meeting yesterday.
Right. Michael Lynk, what do you make of this meeting taking place in Washington, where it seems everyone was there except the Palestinians to decide the future of Gaza? I mean, they also said that Hamas cannot be part of Gaza's future in any way whatsoever.
Well, again, I would echo the comment that this is for the Palestinians to decide. Nothing about us without us should be the guiding rule with respect to what the future of the Palestinians in Gaza and the rest of Palestine ought to be. Where we're going with this, the fact that we have an American president, an American administration that is fully backing Israel with this. Obviously, it's isolated at the Security Council, but its ability to be able to give diplomatic cover to Israel, its ability to continue a huge amount of weapons supply to Israel over the past almost 2 years now, and its willingness to stand by Israel and criticize Western European countries when they raise tepid criticisms of Israel. Certainly my own country, Canada. The issue when Canada made a few cautionary criticisms of Israel 2 weeks ago, Trump said, well, this is going to mix up and mess up the trade negotiations that we have in Canada right now. So what I fear is that the United States will continue to exert this power and this alliance with Israel. But it's now up to the global north, Europe and Canada and other like-minded countries, to actually show that the statements they've made over the last 4 months, they mean by supporting what the UNGA may be debating in the weeks to come with respect to uniting for peace resolution.
Okay, we are going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington.